there, I'm Elaine Salazar. I'm the founder of Ampersand Art Supply, and I'm really excited and really honored because today here at Ampersand Art, we have for the first time Cavanaugh, who came to visit us, and it is her first time, even though she's been working on our surfaces for many, many years. So welcome, Allie.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you for having me.
So great to have you here. One of the reasons that I'm really excited to have Allie here with us is that you've been one of our go-to artists in developing Aquabord over the years. And this is a surface that Aquabord we have today is really the one that we collaborated with you on over the years. So it's thank you for that. And thank you for being part of this Ampersand collaboration that we have with artists. Really appreciate that.
Wow, thank you. And I feel the same way. The feeling's mutual. I wouldn't be where I'm at today without Ampersand and Aquabord.
So just as Aquabord has evolved over the years, your work has also gone through different transformations. Yes. Can you talk about your early work and why Aquabord worked for you in those that early period of your work?
Well, when I got out of art school for about 10 years, from 95 to about 2005, 2006, I was painting in oil.
Really?
Yes. Oil on wood panel, and the oil, it didn't really work with my hand. In retrospect, looking back, I needed that era to figure out conceptually what I was doing, but technically, oil just didn't work with my hand, and it was just sort of a happenstance. I came across a guy that I was working with that was renovating our house that wanted me to do a family portrait in watercolor, and I had been doing portraits my whole life since I was in high school. So I thought, I'll do the portrait and I'll figure out watercolor. So that's what started me working on watercolor. About 6 months I devoted to figurative paintings on watercolor paper, and I really wanted to be represented. We lived in Santa Fe at the time. I really wanted to be represented by a gallery in Santa Fe. And they said, if you can get the work out from behind glass, we will represent you. And so I was searching, because at the time I was doing plaster walls. I was taking trowels and doing renovating this house. And I thought, can I use clay or plaster to make a panel to do watercolor? And so when I started looking up frescoes and how to make fresco panels, that's when I ran across Aquabord. And I thought, what is this? I need to order some.
But that must have been called clapboard textured at the time, right?
I have a lot of paintings and on the back it says clapboard textured. Exactly. And so, I got an Aquabord. I think I did 1 or 2 paintings. I took them into the gallery and they said, this is it. This is how many can you get us? It sort of like got the ball rolling, and it never really stopped. It just sort of gained momentum. It seems like maybe every 6 months I'd get a new gallery, and by 2014 I had 11 galleries in the world, nationally and internationally, and I was selling my paintings kind of as fast as I could make them, and that was that era.
So Allie, that period when you first discovered Aquabord, what was it about this surface beside it being the ability to have it from out under glass that made your paintings work?
Yes. The thing that I love about Aquabord the most is that it was forgiving, and you can also take the paint and move it around, whereas on paper, once it goes in, it's sort of like it stains the paper. You're not going to move the paint once it's down on paper, but on Aquabord, it moves around, which is amazing. I mean, there's so much potential just in that. The colors are more brilliant on Aquabord than on paper. On paper, they sort of dull a little bit, so on Aquabord, they remain very bright and fresh. Obviously it's out from behind glass. You can also scratch into the surface. You can scrub into the surface. It's really
So it's
amazing.
probably the combination of all that made the surface work for you from then. What's been interesting as I look at your current work it's so different.
Yeah.
It's so much more loose.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering about how that transformation
Yes.
happened from the
Yes.
realism to the more loose,
So
looser alley.
So the thing is every artist. I mean, I think we go through, every person, we go through chapters in our life. We have, as an artist, you have to be really inspired and interested in the process. Okay, there needs to be curiosity in there. And what happened with the work from 2007 to 2014, 15, that whole era, it was very literal. My painting, it was very much like this right here. The paintings were very literal. The methods were very direct, and in that process, I after doing it for so many years, I sort of lost curiosity with it. So towards the end of 2014, it really just became not interesting anymore. I needed to start a new chapter. And the thing about that, the timing of that is really interesting because lots of different things were happening at that time. But one thing was that from 2007, well, actually from 95 until 2013, my daughter went to college, but she was going to college right by our house, so she wasn't too far away. But really, 2014 was when she met her now husband and moved out of state, and I didn't have her as my model, and she was sort of like my crutch, because I knew if I could paint her, the painting was going to be great.
Because she was basically the model for example, all your sock series, right?
Yes. She was the model for most of my work, not all of it, but most of it. But when she was not there, and then also sort of just not having any more curiosity in my methods, because I would always try a new paint color or try a new brush there was some little mystery in each painting that I was trying to, discover. And that had kind of faded, and I didn't have that anymore in the work. And so then I lost Neve. She flew, the nest. And then I thought, well, the next chapter is going to be even better. I had all this optimism, because I really had a lot of success with my work, and I gained a lot of confidence, and I knew I wasn't scared to do something totally different. So this painting back here of my daughter Saoirse, my little 2-year-old at the time, she was in the studio, and it was like one of those moments where I remember turning around and she was sitting on my table, on this little play table, and I was just like, oh, grabbed my camera and I just started shooting pictures, because I'm like, it was just like the heavens opened up and this light descended on her that was just so beautiful. And I did my first painting of Saoirse. That's it right there. And when I posted it on social media, the response was just incredible. I mean, people loved it even more. I mean, I think they just like seeing something new. And I think a lot of artists, you get in a groove and you're doing something that's really well received, and you think, I can't break away from this, because if I do something different, then, and so I think a lot of us have, when there's a big change, that a little bit of that fear. So when I put that out there and she was so well received, I thought that just opened the floodgates. I'm like, I can paint her. I mean, I know that it's going to be okay to switch from this, young adult to this child. And so I did several paintings, that one, and then you see the one of her with the cat. But the thing was that I was painting her like I was painting Neve, and Neve is reserved. She's shy. She's a little guarded. The paintings that I was making of Neve reflected Neve's personality, and even the way that I painted her with a lot of control and all that. But Saoirse was a completely different animal. She is like this. She reminded me of a little fairy when she was little. She was so light, and she seemed like like she was floating in the air, and her personality was just so open. Her face was open, and I thought, I can't paint Saoirse like I painted Neve. The personality of her and her essence was not mixing with that very controlled technique. And that's when I thought, I need to play with the water more. I need to like let it just flow and bloom. And the way I describe it is my paintings before 2015 were very literal. I would paint them. I would know from the beginning what I'm painting, and I would just start in painting almost on autopilot until it was to the level that I needed it to be. Whereas when I started painting Saoirse, it became more like a conversation. Like I would put the water down, I would let it do its thing, and just like respond to that. And because I could remove the paint, move it around, then I keep what I like, remove what I want, and sort of model it. So then my technique became more like free and open. And I think that reflected like Saoirse's personality in a way. It's
totally
interesting how
sense.
It kind of works together. Yeah.
But I think what I want to ask you next is that even with this looser style and even the tighter, more detailed style before 2014, one of the things that I think strikes me about your work is that you have such a deep sense of facial expression, of human gesture. And I just want to know what inspires that connection to the human spirit in your paintings, because I think that is, yes, you're saying it's literal, but when I see those socks series, it's about your connection to this human gesture, and that's powerful. And so I just want to, where does that come from, Allie? It's something inside. I don't know where it is.
Some of it is, I think a lot of it is just a gift, but I think that a big part of it is my hearing loss. When I was 2, I had spinal meningitis, and it took my hearing. It took all of my hearing in my right ear and about 50% of the hearing in my left ear. And so the doctors told my mom, just let her be. She will, that's a little muscle, but she'll develop that muscle and she'll learn to communicate. Don't teach her sign language. They said, don't do that. She'll, adjust. And so I, always sat at the front of the class, but always had to like be right with someone. I have to be completely focused when they're talking. I have to lock into their face. I have to read their facial expression, read their body language, like take the whole person in when I'm communicating with someone. So I think over, my whole life of just being really in tune to people in communicating, I think that is part of it. Yeah.
So it's really powerful. Well, I think I could talk to you all day about sort of your history, your inspiration, but I know that our viewers really want to learn about techniques. Yeah. So I know you've developed some pretty sort of fail-proof techniques on Aquabord over the years, and I'd like to talk to you about some of those. I know we can't share all of them, but a few of them. So one of the ones is preparing the surface. Typically we tell artists to take Aquabord, you wet it, you let it release all the air from it, and then get it to a damp stage, and then you bring in the watercolor color onto it so that it really flows. You work a little differently than that. So why don't you talk about how you prepare the surface, and I guess it matters your subject matter, right? And how you're planning on painting.
Right. It depends a lot on what is the end product that I'm looking for with, as far as am I going to want something very tight and realistic. If I'm going to paint like with dry brush, that sort of a technique, more like this one, I don't really need to wet the panel down.
When you're doing the really washy backgrounds, you do wet it down and then drop in all your color, correct?
Yes. Whenever I'm getting more of the bloomy stuff, I get a lot of water on there, get it very, very wet, and then drop the color down, and then it sort of disperses. And the thing is like, you can, if you have only a section that you want, like say a background around a subject or figure, you can just get that area wet, and then the color does not bleed out beyond what you get. So you have a lot of control.
Before we talk about layering, I'd love you to talk about the color and your palette and that you use.
So my basic color palette that I've used for the last 15 years is Payne's Gray. I love Payne's Gray because I feel like it's my black, and it really blends with all the color, and it doesn't fight anything. So I have Payne's Gray. I have ultramarine turquoise. I love that color. It kind of splits into two, like an emerald and then like an ultramarine. It's really, really beautiful. I have a sap green and Perylene maroon duo that I use, and it's just a magical combination. It is on my palette. If I am painting a figure, it is on my palette. Those two colors together make the best skin tone and hair color for any person of any color, going from the fairest skin to the darkest skin, the fairest blonde hair to the darkest black hair. Those two color, that combination is just incredible. And then I always have the Pyrrole orange and the Indian yellow. So that is great for the sunlight, where the sunlight hits the skin, any light, the reds on the lips, the reds around when you're looking in the nose, the opening of the nose, the mouth, the earlobes, in the eyes, that orange and that yellow, those two just are so brilliant. And something about that Pyrrole orange too, like when I pull it out with the water and can make it very, very thin, it's almost like it becomes a very cool red. So there's like a cool red in there, and there's a warm orangey red. I mean, I really use it as my red. And then I have the quinacridones. I like quinacridone gold, quinacridone, like a transparent Pyrrole. The core watercolors are really great with the quinacridones. They're just like beyond like.
And that's your basic palette for almost all of your painting.
That's everything, yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So the next trick must really be your layering.
Yes,
I mean,
it
I
is.
think that's the magic.
Yes.
That you take this simple color palette and you create these complex, beautiful portraits from it. They're really amazing, Allie.
you.
So can you talk a little bit about that layering process and how you think about it and how you take, because I think it's lots of layers and lots of steps, right?
It is. And I start out with a pencil drawing on the Aquabord. The pencil, I erase it, but it scrubs right off with water too, and a scrub brush. So that's one really neat thing. But I first start out with what I call my scratch coat, and it's basically I can start with the pencil drawing, and then I go in with that very first layer that sort of just defines my shapes. It just gets my basic shapes down on the panel, and then after that dries and sets up, then I will erase out the pencil lines, and with a white eraser, only a white eraser. And
so that first scratch layer is really that base color that kind of outlines all of the work and sort of gives you almost like a path for how that
it's a blueprint. It's like a blueprint for the painting. I'm not going to see any of that really in the end. That's just really down underneath it, just as my map to show where everything's going to be, because I want to get those pencil lines out of there.
I think really important is for our viewers is that you really have to make sure that the watercolor on that first layer is completely dry before you begin to do the eraser of the pencil marks, right?
Yes, it's very important that every step of layering on Aquabord, you're dealing with a completely dry Aquabord.
Allie, can you talk just briefly about the layering when you're doing skin tones?
Yes, yeah. So it kind of depends on what my lighting situation is on the face or the figure. If it is something that is just drenched in sunlight, like a lot of clean sunlight, I will go into that portrait, into the skin with the Pyrrole Orange and Indian Yellow mix first. That will be kind of how I define my edges and kind of get, you know, the skin started with the brightest brights, because I don't want to make anything muddy. But if I have a face that is more in shadow, then what I'll do is go in with more of the Perylene Maroon mix, because that's like my shadow color. So I'll kind of get all that established. So I just go in with very light layers. I mean, the lightest that I can possibly get until I get those pencil lines out of there. Then I just go with the next layer. And depending on the portrait and the lighting on the figure, I could do 10, 20, 30 layers on the skin. And the more
amazing.
layers that I add, like the smoother it starts getting.
One of the interesting things that I think you've done is when you actually, one of your tricks, that I'm going to call it your tricks,
Yeah.
about how you, when you're doing like the socks, how you layer each different stripe, and then when you start to pull color
Yes.
from those into the white areas. Can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that? What you call it, your magical trick?
Oh yeah. So something simple with pattern on Aquabord, and this is one example right here. That little slice of her shirt right there. So if I go in with the darkest stripe, okay, and I paint those bands, and get the value built up pretty nice and strong, and then all I have to do is take water, and take the water over that color, and it just pulls up that pigment and creates the whole shadow of the fabric, which is amazing. I mean, it's like I don't even have to add pigment, because the pigment is just so removable and so movable on Aquabord.
It's waiting for you to play with it, isn't
it's
it?
like that. It is just,
Yes.
it's so fun to paint stripes. And that's probably why I painted so many stripes, because that particular technique was just so fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun. Okay, let's talk brushes, okay?
Okay.
Because, you know, most watercolor artists work with brushes that bring a ton of water to the surface,
Yes.
right? You don't. You work with tiny brushes. So talk to me about brushes.
That's probably like the biggest surprise whenever people see that I paint with these tiny brushes. Why are they so little? Because watercolor brushes are usually so big. But I find that the littler brushes, they hold less water, and I have so much more control with them.
So the largest brush you use is a 1.
Yes.
Wow, that's a small brush.
I mean, they're for the majority of the painting. I mean, then there's other parts of the painting where I might grab, you know, a sponge brush, or I have like some 4s, 6s, 8s, but I might like my size 4 brush. That's one brush is going to last me the entire year. I would only use that in certain situations, but yeah, like 95% of all the painting is with those tiny little brushes.
And it's almost like you're drawing, right,
Yes.
with those brushes. It's really, that's why the point is so significant and
Yes.
important to you.
Yes, I really feel that I am a drawer, and the watercolor, the way that I use it is a lot like drawing. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. One of the favorite things that most people like about Aquabord is that you can lift back
Yes.
to the white or to a glazed color underneath.
Yes.
Do you do those techniques, and how do you use that?
Yes, I do. I have lots of different ways that I remove the watercolor on a panel on a painting when I'm working and I need to lift. One is a scrub brush. I love scrub brushes. For my scrub brushes, actually some of my favorite scrub brushes go back to, they were my oil painting brushes, flats from, 25 years ago. And they just, they just have that nice
Little stub.
They've kind of gone down to where they're just like little stubs, and I can take the brush and get it wet and just take it on that edge that I need to lift out, and I can just kind of rub it along there, and then the paint just comes out. The only thing I would say is that you want to make sure that the Aquabord is not wet when you start lifting like that, because if it's really wet, it'll just injure the surface.
Right.
I've scrubbed a lot, but I've never gone all the way through the veneer of the, or whatever, the coating. I've never gone all the way through it, but I will say that you can get an injury on there by working with the wet surface. So be careful with that. But yeah, I scrub out with a brush. And then the other technique that I really like to do a lot is with the X-Acto knife, a number 11 X-Acto blade. And what I can do is scratch into the surface. If you can make it dark, put the dark watercolor down, and then scratch out almost like a scratch board.
Yeah, so is it really, so you do use that same technique for your watercolors?
I can, yeah. And for the hair, a lot of times, scratch out the hairs and stuff.
That's cool. So one of Aquabord's advantages over paper, obviously, is that not only is it archival because we put the Archiva seal before we put the aqua coating on top of it, and so over time your actual watercolors will not yellow over time, so it's really important. Yes. But I think one of the most important things about Aquabord for watercolors is that you don't have to frame them under glass. Right. And so how do you seal the Aquabord before you sort of get it into these beautiful finished art pieces of art ready for the wall?
Well, I like to use Krylon matte spray. It's the museum series. I like the matte. They have matte, satin, gloss. I have used the gloss before. I also, after spraying that, I also like to sometimes use the golden UVLS coating on it as just an extra added varnish.
It's just a real treat for you having come to Ampersand and be here with us. It really is. So thank you so much. And I wanted to put a plug in for those of you who are interested to learn more about how Allie works on Aquabord. She did this amazing 3-part series, a video with the National Watercolor Society. And so I don't know how, people can buy that, right?
Yes, it's available on my website. If you go to alliecavanaugh.com, under workshops, there's a link that goes to Vimeo on demand, and you can purchase the 3-part workshop. And I go over every single thing that you need to know to get started painting on Aquabord. I go into the surface prep. I even talk to Elaine in the video, and I do some little demos, and then I go into a painting, a portrait, start to finish. And in this workshop, I cover 4 really solid, I feel like, techniques, or the one is hair, how to paint hair in watercolor on Aquabord, the backgrounds, the blooms, stripes, skin, and skin, stripes, jewelry. I paint a really beautiful neck piece and teach how to paint the beads and all that. Then after I do the portrait, start to finish, then I break down, like, how do I finish the surface, frame it, it's ready for a museum show or a gallery show or whatever you need your client, start to finish.
Great, Allie. Good to know that about the video. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Until next time.